Hi, pile number five. So I have an awesome pile of cards here. It's under the little bitty pyrite who's still nested in the matrix here for you. So if you picked based on that or the pile number, you found the right one, hopefully. And the way that this chunk of cards works is I pulled them face down so we can all be surprised together. Although hopefully you won't be surprised because, this will resonate and be your pile. If it's not, please go check out another video. It's okay if there are no messages here for you. Don't force something to fit your narrative. I'm not here to tell you who you are, how to live your life. Now, we're going to start with some significator cards, which just tell you, or tell me really, what the overall energies for the whole year are going to be for you. And you guys don't tell the other piles. You got two of these tarot cards. You were only supposed to get one. All right, no favorites. Okay, but we have the King of Pentacles, and we also have the Four of Swords in reverse. We'll unpack those in a second, but I get the feeling that your energy is flowing from this King of Pentacles into this Four of Swords, just based on the motion from the cards and how, like, the leaves are up here and then they go over to the right into these flower blossoms and they're falling. So I get that there might be a cyclical energy here, or a transition of some point. I also want to point out that there's like the radiance of yellow around this character in the Four of Swords, as well as above the head in the Pentacles. So it feels kind of like you're taking this earthly abundance that you have, that the Four of Pentacles radiates, is like being a master of kind of the physical and having a lot of abundance. Um, and you're somehow transitioning into some inner, like, very spiritual and emotional realizations here, and there's a lot of power that is coming from within, not just necessarily um, power you can derive from the physical situations that you're in and the physical tools and means and resources that you have that you can apply. I'm also getting a feeling that there may be some kind of motifs of death here, and that's not a bad thing. It's just that perhaps there will be a couple cycles in this year where things that aren't meant to serve you any longer or haven't served you for a while are going to start falling away. And it feels more than anything like, even though maybe you feel like you're blessed or you have what you need in the physical world, you've been carrying some scars and some trauma with you. And you're in a place where you recognize it and you're finally ready to, um, very seriously and maybe still painfully, assess what those are and how you're ready to let those fall away. And as you let those things fall away and you release them, you'll come back to revisit yourself in this physical world. And what you'll assess is that by releasing traumas and scars, but not physical scars, that have been impacting you and holding you down in ways emotionally or mentally that you didn't think they would. As you release those, you invite changes to yourself that cause more blessings within the physical world. Um, and then you feel like you're in a more comfortable, supported place to take more time to let go of some more scars. So it feels like, regardless of how rich or poor you are, it feels like for whatever situation you're in, you are comfortable with the physical means that you have available to you, regardless of what anyone thinks or what society tells you. And that's a beautiful place to be in. So there's a lot of healing from past scars and perhaps others or yourself that have really damaged you. And it's time. It's the right time to safely get rid of those so that you don't feel stunted as you grow as an individual from them any longer. And I think that is a really cool, inspiring message. So we'll unpack those more. That was kind of a lot from two cards. So bear with me. But you guys, I swear I don't play favorites, but you also got three of these cards, and I only asked for two. So maybe there's just like a lot going on with you guys, and I'll be unpacking more and more as we go. I had a couple bombshells drop in some other piles as I opened up more cards because, again, I don't know what they are beforehand. So I guess I should buckle my own seatbelt and see what all you have in store because it seems a little complex right now. A lot of other piles, it was like transition from this to this, and it's going to be super great. And in a year, you guys are developing into cycles already. So we have the ant, which is number one, and it's talking about time to collaborate. What sticks out to me most already, and you guys are just like so open about what you're doing. There's an above and a below, and what I'm hearing a lot of is as above, so below. As above, so below. We have a figure that's upright and a figure that's reversed or mirroring as far as orientation goes. And what that really means so far to me is that the work you're doing internally, emotionally, and spiritually will manifest in positive changes in the physical world. And as you positively experience new things in the physical world, you feel like you're in a better place to better assess what's going on and heal more internally. So you're getting into this positive growth cycle where every time you make a positive change or experience a positive change in one portion of your life, it gets reflected to more positivity in the other section of your life. I don't know if I feel an acceleration of these cycles, but I feel like the impacts each time you strip away a new scar will feel more and more significant and empowering or healing to you. So I don't know exactly what collaboration it's talking about, like collaborations with what or who. So maybe we'll ask about that, or we'll hear more in a minute because this is only four cards. But the armadillo spirit is number three, so still like a very early number, and conveniently there's three puzzle pieces. So take with that what you will. But the armadillo spirit is about setting healthy boundaries. I don't know what those boundaries are to or about, so perhaps we'll get more information. Um, and your last card here is the moth spirit. I'm actually going to put it above. So the moth spirit has the message, the very crude message of surrender now. And we'll unpack these cards in a little more detail in a second here. But I'm getting from the Four of Swords being reversed, the figure itself is um, signaling to me sort of some similar energies as the Hanged Man, where you're just kind of hanging, like maybe you're swaying in the wind a little bit. Like stuff is still happening around you, but you don't necessarily feel the need or take the action to act with any of it or because of any of it. You're taking a moment of self reflection that is needed, but also requires a lot of patience and the exercise of perhaps, in your case, I'm hearing a little bit of discipline to not jump on everything or feel the need to muscle and strong arm certain things. And I feel like that's a very real balance that some king energies can struggle with because they're so strong and capable is that it's easy for them to act on things, but perhaps in this case, you're being encouraged to kind of relax and not act on everything, but be a little patient and wait before you take any more steps forward. Um, so we'll see what's going on here. I again, I'm gonna say it one more time. I swear, no favorites, but I asked for one of these cards, and this pile got two of them. So I think there is a little bit of a complex message happening here for the next new year. So we have thoughts as well as dormant aspects. And this is going to be a little bit out of left field. But I am an avid Magic player, like Magic the Gathering. Yes, the card game. And when I flipped over this card, I immediately heard in my mind Thoughtseize, which is a different card and kind of mechanic from that game. And what that card really talks about, like the intentions behind it, are to quite literally seize somebody else's thoughts, like rip them out of their head, like commandeer them and use them, like weaponize their thoughts against the person you took them from. And so I'm wondering if between Thoughtseize and set healthy boundaries and potentially like dormant aspects, there's something going on here. Especially if we're talking about inner works and scars, about the call to action or the need for you to unpack what's been going on and maybe like discern where some of your thoughts are coming from and like where they stem from, those being healthy or unhealthy aspects. I think there's a significant mirroring in colors here where there's a dark like purple undertone that's surrounding a yellow radiation, in that um, I think we're going to unpack a little bit more so that I can understand this reading better at least. Let me move these up so you can see them. So I was just going to say, as we push these up real quick, I think there's an interesting mirroring between colors in terms of this yellow radiating and there being like a dark, heavy, like purple and blue kind of intrusive background. And I think that may have to do with there are thoughts that are radiating or stemming from somewhere. Um, and they're either being impeded by an atmosphere around them, so some other internal dialogue or feelings that you have, and they're conflicting. So, like, these thoughts coming from the gold figures or areas are kind of like challenging what the pre existing external surrounding thoughts are. Uh, and it's a little bit nebulous right now whether or not those are positive or negative impacts on your mental health and emotions. So we'll get some more information on that. There's a lot going on right now. I also did want to talk about um, my camera going out of focus for as long as it did, because it has moments where it'll be like, oh, I'm going to be more or less focused, but it's never really made the cards that illegible without cause for that long. And I point that out because, like, significant signals can come from lots of things, and they don't necessarily all have to be signals from cards or what I can tune into and pick up on. But I feel like there's a very real want from some factor involved that I'm picking up on here that has been covering things up, and it feels like now is not the right time to admit some of these things. So I just want to point out at any point of this video, even if it's resonating for you, if it doesn't feel like it's the right time for you to have these conversations, or it feels like it's detrimental to your emotional health and your growth to discuss these types of things, like you can click off the video. Like you don't have to hear about stuff just because somebody else on the frickin' internet wants to talk about it. So I'm gonna leave it there because something out there is trying to obscure this for better or worse. But we're gonna keep chugging because I'm not sure that I care, and it's not that I don't care about you. It's just that I picked all these piles with good intentions that this would help other people understand some advice they can have to grow and evolve from a place of love as they need to for this year. So, I shouldn't be saying anything that is like massively harmful or detrimental, but it is a general reading, so someone might find this where it might be easier for them if they just don't have this discussion, whatever that may be, because I'm not sure yet. So I took a second to realign your cards here as is. That way they all fit. And I want to point out some significant things that have happened since I took a break, because the interesting thing about channeling is that the entities that are conveying messages to me and through me to you, because this isn't coming from me unless I tell you otherwise. And that usually looks like I feel for you and I'm sending you a big virtual hug, which in this case I definitely am. And I want to preface this with saying that not all of this energy is happy go lucky, and there are some very real energies that are heavy as well as light. And I don't think that's necessarily something to be embarrassed about, scared by, upset with. But if for whatever reason you're not in a position where that's something that you want to hear about, I would like to once again preface this with saying you get to choose what you want to take to heart and what you want to expose yourself to. And if at any way this feels too upsetting or like not healthy for you to listen to, you're not in a place where this is going to help your growth, then I would ask that you just don't watch this. And if it doesn't resonate, super don't watch this. Or take it to heart. Like it can just be entertainment at that point, because at the end of the day, that's what a faceless stranger on the internet is. But for those of you who want to stick with this, I applaud you, and I'm sending you good vibes in whatever way that I can. And I want to start by explaining what has happened since I had to take a break. So, um, I have two dogs in my home with me, and ever since I started flipping over some of the cards and handling the materials from pile five, I've been bombarded with them trying to distract me. Um, and usually they're quite calm. They just kind of lay down and hang out because we just went for a walk. I do that between like these breaks in the readings. Or if they do want something, they'll usually play with each other because they understand that I'm working and I'm in a different room that they're not allowed in. But they've been trying repeatedly and quite persistently to distract me. Um, Along with, these cards, I couldn't figure out at first how to lay them on the table so you can see them. They were obscuring each other, which is another form of distraction. Whenever I went to some of my guidebooks to double check something, they would topple over, and the one I was looking for would be on the bottom of the pile. My husband came home from work a little bit early, before I could really get started. And on top of all of that, and the camera going out of focus for quite a long time, like I haven't seen it do before, so these cards were more legible to you. I wasn't able to read that this was the Four of Swords, and I'm sure that was upsetting for a few of you. I called it the Four of Cups over and over again. And I think that there's a very real energy somewhere in here, um, that doesn't necessarily want this reading to happen or this information to be out. I'm not sure the intentions behind that, but it's something to be aware of. And if for some reason it resonates to you that there's some kind of denial or obscuring happening, I wanted to make that apparent. So I'm going to do my best to not get hazy or distracted, um, and see the cards for what they are. But there is some kind of masking, tricky, deceitful something going on here. And those intentions could be good or not. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just something tricky that I'm gonna do my best to navigate. And I would ask that you be patient. And I believe if you made it through me calling this the Four of Cups for a while, you have. The really interesting thing is that me seeing this as the Four of Cups doesn't necessarily change the energies I was able to see in the card. It was simply mislabeled. So the Four of Swords being what it is, still has a lot to do with inward introspection, and those who are savvy in tarot cards may disagree that it is a big difference. But it, in conjunction with the other significator cards here, and me clarifying it, hasn't really changed any of the stances that I've had thus far, which is really nice. And also very interesting. And so I still think there's this cycle of um, this year you navigating being in a position of having what you need, in a physical way, or maybe more than you need, in a physical way to where you're comfortable and capable of doing other things, such as resting and having introspection, exercising spiritual or emotional growth in a way to where you feel like you have the time and the resources and the energy to set aside to do so. And you're being called to, and I don't know what part of you or what external energies may be encouraging you to go with inward or motivating you to do so. But there's an opposing energy that would rather you didn't. And that's the one that I believe is kind of giving me a little bit of a little bit of a harder time getting through this than I've had with the other piles. And again, that's not necessarily coming from a malicious place. It could be a protective place. And so once again, if you feel like you're not ready to hear this reading, or it doesn't resonate with you, then that may be other things looking out for you being protective. So if you feel the need to click off because that would be healthier for you, go ahead and do that. It won't hurt my feelings. I'm just a stranger on the internet. So um, there's still this theme of some part of you on the inside is glowing, and it's being symbolized by some kind of yellow concentrated spot. So we see it above the King of Pentacles, we see it radiating from the head of the figure in the Four of Swords. And we also see it here in the Dormant Aspects card. Now, the Dormant Aspects card specifically locates this golden figure as your heart, and it's more of like the deepest, most vulnerable part of you. Um, and it very much feels like a part of you is yearning to not be as deep or buried as it has been for a long time. And that could be for a few reasons. It could be because you've grown a lot as an individual and you're ready to release new parts of you that were kernels and are now starting to blossom and need more space to expand and grow, and frankly be cultivated, um, to express more of your inner beauty and live a life that is now more in alignment with your growing, transforming self. There's also another part of this pile, and I believe this one is more tied to this energy of rejection and wanting to obscure things, where um, these parts of you that are asking to come out and are yearning for that have been buried for a long time due to emotional scars, and traumatic events that have changed you in a way to where you felt the need to shell up or guard certain aspects of yourself because the way in which the world and outside external forces or people have responded to them was traumatic and damaging for you. It was not met with love, acceptance, or at the very least, tolerance or neutrality. It was instead met with probably discrimination, hate, disbelief, ill intentions, um, scrutinization, crucifixion, some really harsh, really damaging things and actions and emotions, probably some very violent, stinging words at the very least. And so another part of you grew and took over because that's what you needed to survive in the world at that time and develop the way that you have, to where you're in a position where physically you're doing quite well and you're not worried about how you're going to make it in this world or take care of yourself on a physical level. And that's allowed you the comfort and freedom to have enough awareness to where you may feel unsatisfied in your life, like on a soul level you have an itch that you can't scratch, you can't reach it, um, because now that those worries are taken care of, the concerns that are apparent for you are the ones that have been hidden for a long time. They've been dormant, they've been pushed to the back because there were other things for you to focus on. Um, and this is where a lot of the thoughts card is tying into this, where you're kind of recognizing certain thought patterns you have or questioning why you're thinking about things certain ways and why things still bother you. The kind of the beginning stages of the introspection that's stemming from these parts of yourself that got sheltered and buried due to good intentions, that you're in a place to where you're ready for them to not necessarily be sheltered and buried. And that's not a bad thing, um, as long as you're ready for it. But because it is going to be a big change, and the bearing of these aspects of your true self um, was done in response to traumatic events, it may be painful and at the very least likely uncomfortable to transition back into expressing those or accepting those or actually embodying them. And it's going to take a lot of confidence and it may take a lot of time. And this, for some of you, I'm hearing, won't be something you're going to figure out in a year. This is going to be the start of it. And just because it takes longer than a year doesn't mean it's going to be painful the whole time. And it doesn't mean that you won't see positive effects and be happy with your progress within that year. So it's important to be accepting and patient with yourself and understand that maybe this is something that you begin to embody and accept and express on your own or in conjunction with personal help. If a professional in a field that is appropriate for you, like a psychologist or a therapist or um, something of that relation would be helpful to you. Because again, this is a general reading and I'm a stranger. I can't give you specifics. But what I can say is that there's a really like uncanny feeling of your higher self knew this has been a long time coming. And part of yourself is really relieved that you're at a point to where this tension and this canning of some very important parts of yourself you were once proud of enough to show to the world um, are starting to come back out because it's releasing some tension and pressure within you. And so you have the opportunity here to handle that in a healthy way and rediscover parts of yourself that you're meant to embody rather than have some kind of odd internal explosion from things being bottled up too long. So you're in a really good spot, actually. And it's normal for, or it's sad that it's normal, but it's not uncommon for individuals to be rejected in some way when they're still young and impressionable and developing by people that are important to them at the time, or influential to them at the time, like children being rejected by their parents for having certain qualities or characteristics that can have lasting effects as you mature. And so you don't realize until you reach your own adulthood and a level of independence and maturity to be in a position where you can question those triggering traumatic painful events and challenge them and come out on the other side rejecting them. um, it takes a lot of emotional, mental, and spiritual maturity and courage, quite frankly, to be in a position where you can reject what you've been told your whole life, because in your heart of hearts you fundamentally choose to disagree with those things and be the change that you want to see in the world and be the person that you wish you had as an influential figure or as a guardian growing up and maturing at earlier phases in your life. So one thing that is also like very interesting is that the ant card here talking about collaboration, the armadillo talking about setting healthy boundaries, and the moth card, they're all talking about things in tight relation to the universe and yourself. So I want to take a minute and unpack some of what the guidebook says in it, because I think that there isn't a better way to express um, what's been going on for a lot of you in this pile and what's been happening. So the ant spirit does talk about collaboration, but the biggest collaborator that the ant calls out by name specifically is spirit. And spirit can be like God, spirit guides, ancestors, like, you know, however you want to think about it, or the universe. It's however, whatever wording is comfortable for you. But the book says spirit, so it says when ant spirit comes to visit, it's to celebrate the benefits of working in a partnership with others as part of a community or tribe. Spirit reminds you that to build your dream, you need to work with others, accept help, and trust in your most important partnership, the one that you have with spirit. Your intentions will come to fruition if you remain awake and focused on co creating your reality with others and with spirit. Just as an excerpt. And if we talk about the armadillo card really quickly, it says the armadillo spirit will show itself when you are entering a phase where, in order for you to be in alignment with your intentions and co create, so that coming up again, co create your best life, you may have to be discerning and say no to many things that may have been okay for you in the past. This also means that you need to learn where you end and where others begin, what is yours to own and what is not. Know your limits and understand that it's an empowering choice to say no to what does not feel right. Armadillo Spirit is here to tell you it's time to be honest with yourself about what you really want. Be clear on what you are agreeing to, declare what your needs are, and say no is no, and no is a full sentence. You don't have to give reasons if you do not feel called to. So these are acts of respect and kindness to others as well as yourself. Trust your body's signals, and you will know what to do. So Armadillo Spirit guides you in making good decisions that are grounded in a strong sense of what belongs to you and what does not. So lastly, I wanted to give like a quote or two from the Moth card before I kind of give some extra 2 cents on the matter, I guess. Um, so Moth Spirit asks, what is guiding you right now? What are you in alignment with or pursuing, um, or someone with tenacity? And so it's really asking, like, the Moth Spirit Moth Spirit asks, what is guiding you right now? Are you in alignment with spirit or pursuing something or someone with so much tenacity that it has become a compulsion or addiction? Are you so intoxicated by a potential relationship or opportunity that you can't think straight? Hard work and dedication are virtues, and love, of course, is a beautiful thing. However, when Moss Spirit appears, it is time to consider if you have gone over the edge in a relentless pursuit. And here's a part that sticks out to me quite boldly: workaholism, overreacting, um, perfectionism, overachieving, or addiction to certainty or even to a person may be your current vice. The form of your addiction does not matter so much as awareness of the consequences of remaining persistent when moderation is needed. Let go of your excessive energy by channeling it in more than one direction. The fire burns hot, and you do not want to be engulfed by your passion to the exclusion of all the other pursuits that matter to you. Now is the time for surrender and radical acceptance so that your drive does not cause you to flee or to fight. Spirit wants you to release your need for certainty, your need for control, so that you can relax into a more balanced way of using your moth energy. Banish the shoulds and the musts from your ways of thinking so that you can enjoy what is and what already can be. Let go of the hows and think more about what your goals and desires are, and allow what is right now to be, and understand that the might be's may not be in your control. So this is where I get some conflicting feedback. On one side, I have energies that are very supportive and very excited about this, and that's part of where the information, a lot of it of what I'm getting, is coming from. And there's quite a bit of energy that's coming from a place of pain and holds a little bit of disgust for me, frankly. Um, but that doesn't matter necessarily to me, because when I'm done with this reading, they won't be bothering me. But it's interesting because I don't feel like the disgust is coming from a place of hate or maliciousness. So what I mean by that is I feel like these are very defensive measures that have kept you safe for a long time. And I think something that we sometimes need a reminder about in our lives is that we develop survival mechanisms and what some people label appropriately or otherwise as coping mechanisms, as protective mechanisms, because at that point in time, we are better off and more successful when we have those attributes, those qualities, those reactions in play, period. Um, and when you're in an environment where you no longer require those, that's when it is appropriate and healthy and empowering to shed them. So it's going to be different for all of you. But what I'm hearing is that um, a lot of you have been damaged in some way, most likely when you were younger, however young that means for you. This could be childhood or just like a couple years ago. Um, where I feel like you were quite harshly and inappropriately rejected, and in a way that was very traumatic and hateful. And you've responded by shelling up so that and protecting yourself from those that couldn't approach you from a place of love and acceptance, or at least tolerance. And that was for your own benefit at that time, because being younger, let's say, for example, you're a child, that was one of your best plans to keep yourself feeling safe and put yourself in a position to where you could still flourish and develop in the best way you knew how. So, for example, like I remember when I was a child, my father remarried to my stepmother, and my stepmother was incredibly cruel. And there were times where when I would have to go stay with my dad and my stepmother for certain weekends based on like what the court agreed on, I would have days where it was better for me as a child to do as I was told, even if it was cruel or unusual, because the alternative was trying to stand up for myself to no success. So sometimes my stepsister would like break a toy or damage furniture um, because she at the time enjoyed doing so. And then when my stepmom would notice, she would blame it on myself usually, or sometimes my older sister, but that was a lot less common. So my stepmom's response would be to do things like, like lock me in a room for multiple hours or tell me that I had to stand in the corner and would forget I was there and I would be there for like quite literally 12 hours or half a day. Um, and it was better than the alternative of arguing or trying to, bust out of a room with a locked door or leave the corner or at least sit down to relieve my legs after standing for so long, because the alternative was a much harsher, much crueler punishment, um, and a lot of unnecessary berating on a verbal level. Um, and so for me as a child, even though it wasn't particularly fair and I would have been well within my rights to speak out against it, it would have made my immediate physical situation worse instead of better. So at that point in time, it was better to just listen and to conform and to shell up a little bit. Um, and I feel like there were some of you where you were met with a similar situation where you didn't have the power to outright reject the situation and remove yourself from it. So if you had like a job where your boss or coworkers were particularly abusive, but you couldn't quit because you needed the money and you didn't have opportunities at that time to get another job or quit and live off your savings for a while. For those of you who were children, you could have been in a similar situation where you had nowhere else to go, so you dealt with the hand that you were dealt, and you kind of bided your time until you were established enough in the world and capable enough to find other opportunities that allowed you to leave. And those situations, you know, they're sad and they're tragic because um, they always don't feel fair and they always do lasting damage. But the really excellent part about where you are now is, as being called to heal and get rid of these survival mechanisms and embrace parts of yourself that you hid from this, tells me that you've done a lot of excellent work, and especially with this King of Pentacles energy, you're in a position to where it's safe for you to re-embody these parts of yourself that were kind of locked away, and it's healthy for you to do so, and that's why they're kind of calling out and getting ready to be nurtured and take up more space, and be embodied proudly again. Because the problem with not embodying your true self and your authentic self and living a life that's in alignment with that is you'll always run into walls of not feeling truly satisfied and quite often feeling like something's missing, even if you have a privileged life or experience, or other people at least tell you you do. That's your decision to make. It'll always just feel kind of off and not satisfying, because it's not truly what you want, and it's not what you necessarily all the way want now or what your higher self wants, and it's not what you wanted when you came to this world. And so there's this tension and disconnect within you. And the best way to argue this is to just understand that your intuition, which speaks through your heart, your emotion, which speaks through your heart, just like those core feelings you get um, as your deepest self and your heart of hearts, that's your best compass to understand what will fulfill you and what won't, and what will lead you to having the best, most valuable experience you have in a way that will satisfy you and will make you happy and will make you feel loved and allow you to spread that love and light, that happiness, that fulfillment with the world, and empower others to do so, to whatever degree or through whatever means that means to you at your best. um, and so what I'm really hearing is like, this could be parts of you that could apply to anything, and it's going to be so diverse. So as an example, let's say you were really passionate about um, let's say you were really passionate about being a musician, and your family has come from a long line of lawyers, and they wanted you to carry on their name and inherit their firm, because when they retired, they didn't want it to diminish into nothing, and they didn't want to give it to someone outside of the family name. So they badgered and pressured you into it, and it got to the point where they refused to support you in any musical pursuits. So they maybe rejected the idea of buying or renting an instrument for you to practice with, and they wouldn't allow you to join any bands in your school or otherwise, or any orchestras outside of classes, because they didn't want to encourage behaviors that could lead you to other careers outside of being a lawyer. And that meant shutting down a lot of your passions with a lot of aggression. Um, on the flip side of things, it could also be like your, just so it's not just intellectual pursuits here, to give you a different example. Let's say your family has owned uh, a farm for a long time. Let's say they're like a dairy, and your family for like 9 generations or six or what have you, um, they have been ranching dairy cattle, their whole lives, and they have a well established operation, you know, out in rural, like Eastern Washington or Texas or Oklahoma or something, and you really want to be a medical professional, you want to be a doctor, like a family physician, or you want to be a surgeon, and your family is really upset by this because this farm that has been in your bloodline for many generations is going to lose out on what they deem is the most valuable successor. So they unfairly pressure you to not move away, to not go to university, to not become well educated and pursue your dreams. And this doesn't have to be just about career or goals. This could be as simple as you really enjoy like watching anime and reading manga, and that's like one of the most enjoyable pastimes for you, and one of your parents, for whatever reason, decides that they don't want their child to watch anime and read manga because they don't understand it and they think it's weird. So they'll tell you unfair things like, you can't have that because it's strange and only like weird creepy people do that, and it's really cringy, and everyone at your school will make fun of you, and just make it like, a bigger deal than it is, and totally unfair, and just shame you for something that's very innocent and should be wildly inconsequential in terms of hindering yourself. Like, it should be a good impact on your life to enjoy whatever hobby it is that you do. And maybe there would be like other people in your life that wouldn't understand, and maybe like tease or discriminate or like refuse to talk to you because you're into anime or whatever. But there's also a whole bunch of people that are that would relate to you on it, and at the very worst, like, don't have a problem with it, and they don't devalue you as a human being for being interested in something that they personally don't understand or don't find super interesting. Um, it could also be possible that, um, like, your fashion sense was rejected, or perhaps uh, outside of like fashion sense, perhaps your sexual orientations or your choice to identify as a specific gender has been wildly rejected by very close people to you who mean a lot to you or have been very influential. So maybe your family or your parents or your close friends have rejected you for this, and it's it's finally time for you to start accepting who you are for what you are, and not be hurt by that just for being who you are. And I really feel like even if you can't recognize it yet, you've really cultivated a physical environment, whether that be your home, or a new social structure, or both, to where you're in a position to where you can start reigniting and reaccepting and unshielding, unburying those parts of you in a way that is safe and is healthy and is coming from a place of love and will be met with acceptance and love by important people around you. And as you grow and make these changes, there may be other individuals in your life that won't understand, or they will reject you, and that has the very real risk of causing you to shell up again. But what you're being encouraged to do instead is reject those people and don't let them be a big part of your life and take up space, because if they can't grow along with you and support you for being your real authentic you, then they never really supported you in the first place. They only liked this fake you, and they inherently have shown that they're not people who deserve to receive your love or your time of day, because they can't reciprocate that, and they have chosen not to support you but instead bring you down, and that can come from a place of immaturity or fears or hurt or damage that they have themselves. But whatever the reason, just understand and know that none of that is your fault or your responsibility. And telling somebody that you don't want them in your life because they can't be healthy for you, they choose not to accept you for your real self, is not an act of hate. Um, it's an act of love towards yourself. And there's a very real difference between choosing to reject somebody or not give them time of day as an act of malice and doing it as an act of self protection. Um, and so, for those of you who are worried about that, just understand that you can reject outside influences to take care of yourself. It doesn't always have to be an act of violence or offense against them, regardless of how they see it. That's their problem, and something that they're going to have to work through. And you might be part of that lesson for them, but it's not your responsibility. So I want to pull some more cards here just to start to figure out what this means for different aspects of your life. So I'm going to put these aside for the moment. So we'll put these in frame, but over here out of the way. And yeah, you can still see those mostly. So I have these cards that give overall energies, and I asked for a current energy and something you're going to transition to at some point this year. I can't tell you when. It could be the 1st or December 31st, or any time in between. But the energies are kind of asked about in 3 different ways. So these ones represent beginning and later energies related to personal relationships. The next pile is for career and or goals, because if you're not working, that's fine. Um, and then we have a last pile that has it the question asked just towards personal growth, so no external factors or relationships. So we'll start with the personal ones. So you're starting with the energy of the deer, and at some point you're transitioning to energy represented by the dragonfly. So the deer reiterates a lot of what your significator cards have um, in this very delicate situation that you have. And the deer is normally seen as being intuitive and graceful. In this deck specifically, it symbolizes being loving and the earth being a feminine energy. It's seen as the symbol of a mother, that nurturing motherly love. Now, you can be any sex or identify as any gender to have this apply to you. Spiritual masculine and feminine are much different than human labeled masculine and feminine physical traits. So, normally the deer card will appear when it's symbolizing that there's a new birth or a celebration of a new life coming. And that could be true for you as you kind of go through these cycles of introspection that may lead to um, accepting parts of yourself that have been hidden or rejected for a long time for your self protection, and you no longer need those protections. So you realize it's okay to shed them and you're growing from it. That could certainly develop into you kind of recreating yourself and parts of your soul having a second coming or a second birth, as you know, you really start understanding who your true self is. The deer, interestingly enough, because it has to deal with a lot of symbolism around children and childlike innocent energies and nurturing those, I feel like for a decent amount of you out there, pile five, um, a lot of this trauma can be traced back to your childhood, where as a child you were fine with expressing these certain qualities or parts of yourself, and through no fault of your own, um, other individuals, being adults or other cruel children, really shut you down and rejected you quite harshly for what you were. And that's where hiding these kinds of parts and shielding them to protect them and yourself came from. So, for some of you, this is tied to a childhood trauma or multiple traumas. So it may be helpful to kind of think about what you were okay with about yourself as a child that you're not necessarily willing to accept or openly embody or admit to the world now, and sort of think about if you really want to continue rejecting or hiding certain parts of yourself, and if that's good for your long-term mental and emotional happiness, or if you feel called to start making changes and possibly cultivating um, an environment or taking little steps to make sure that you feel safe and productive in doing those, even though for a lot of you, I feel like you do have a safe space. And it's just a matter of recognizing that, um, or developing a different space because you have the means to do so. The other thing with the deer that I want to point out is that um, even though it is known for being loving and intuitive and sharing things gracefully, so your intuition is going to be very important for driving understanding what you need to work on and what you feel called to look at on an introspective level and perhaps reaccept into your life as you're being called to. So intuition is a big part of understanding, like, what parts of myself do I want to reaccept and not bottle up anymore, and you know, like, what am I really being called to do to have a more fulfilled, happy, self-loving life. Um, Interestingly enough, though, the deer out of balance is also known for being concerned and overly protective. And what I really hear is that you're kind of knocked off balance and you've been kind of wobbling around for a while now because there are parts of yourself you didn't feel comfortable embodying and have buried or rejected. Um, and so as you go through this work, this spiritual work, if you do decide it's a right time to do it, which the cards say so, but I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Um, because life is complicated and there are a lot of moving factors for all of you out there. But I wish you the best, and I hope that um, you do feel like you're in a place where you can move forward and take steps, however little or productive, to start feeling better. Because the effect will snowball and the universe will support you. It can't run on nothing. It will amplify and complement your actions. It can't do the first steps for you. So it just needs that initiative from you. But there's a lot of this protection and concern will start to alleviate as you begin to do the work, even if it means having to face more rejection and in turn just choosing to not let the individuals that rejection is coming from take up space in your life. And that's an important part of growing is um, choosing what needs to be pruned within yourself as well as the world around you, because it will have reactions to you changing, and you get to choose who's privileged enough to be a part of your life and share your time and energies and resources with. It's not up to other people to tell you how they get to exploit you. Um, and there are, for whatever situation, and there are steps you can take to create a more loving, less exploitative or dangerous environment, whatever that may be for you. So the dragonfly, which you're going to transition into at some point this year, as long as you do some of this work in whatever way that looks like for you. The dragonfly, and this is a pretty exciting and optimistic thing to transition into, is known for being a master of light, understanding illusion, and breaking those illusions, and is a master of understanding their own mind. So it's a lot of ethereal energies and mysticism that surround the dragonfly. And it is this way, and it symbolizes being a master of the mind because the dragonfly itself is always moving and shifting and shimmering and changing, much like a healthy mind will. There isn't stagnation, but there's not a frustration that things are moving. There's instead a beauty and a natural flow to it. And that's kind of what you'll transition into as you begin to heal. And other individuals that accept these changes within you and individuals that you will attract into your life later, because they are attracted to your new resonance and frequencies of this like light and love and self-acceptance that you give off. They will appreciate you for what you are, and they will also see this inner beauty that shines from within out that you have. And so instead of kind of having this figure where they are glowing with this beauty, but it's shielded by the dark purple dragon in the surroundings. Instead, this golden light would shine beyond the dragon and the surroundings, and other people will pick up on that subconsciously or otherwise, depending on how in tune they present themselves to be. Um, and this will be almost like a dreamlike state compared to what you've been in, where things will seem crystal clear and you'll be very joyful and you'll find joy in your surroundings as well as within yourself. And it will be this very like magical experience because of how different it is to what you're in now. And the more you exercise it and grow and learn to accept yourself, the less, I don't want to say the less magical it will feel, but the more real it will feel. So it'll feel less like this is a dream, and you'll just be happy to wake up every day and understand that this is the new reality that you worked really hard for and crafted, and you'll have such a profound appreciation not only for the value that is yourself and the beauty and love that is yourself, but also for these individuals, new and old, that accept you for what you are and understand that the others who didn't are the ones that are at fault and have a lot of growing to do. Um, and they will also reject others who reject you if that comes up in the future. So, in other words, you'll have a very solid support system that if you feel like it's helpful for you to have reassurance from other outside factors, you will have that. But right now, you're being called to not rely on others for reassurance. You're being called to cultivate that within yourself. Because if you only get reassurance from outside factors, you won't be able to embody this really hard learned lesson of what it means to love yourself truly, regardless of what's happening around you. And that's where you get the steadfast, unwavering love and beauty and joy that will carry you throughout this lifetime and motivate you the ways that you need to be to achieve what you want to and live the life that you want to that is more fulfilled and happy. So I hope that makes sense. And because this is talking mostly about personal relationships, this is a little bit twofold, and I've seen this in other piles where we're talking about relationships with other people and maybe certain people being supportive and others needing to probably have contact cut somewhat definitively, at least if not short term. Um, and there's also this interesting, like, your self relationships um, are reflected a lot here with inner growth and where you'll be before and after when you kind of handle yourself. And I also want to mention the energies that have been very wary of me, and it's sometimes a little bit aggressive because they're trying to defend you. It feels a lot like those are aspects of your higher self that are trying to protect you because like we talked about with an off balance deer, they are protective and wary and a little bit scared as a defense mechanism. But as we continue to talk about how things with a little bit of, or a lot of it, of inner work here, um, you can transition into a life to where you can just be your authentic self, no stops, and you can be happy and okay and not be damaged and hurt the way you were before. And others that reject you later in your life, they simply won't matter and be able to damage you the same way that they have in the past because you've grown so much and matured so much and you have so much inner strength now. Um, and you'll have a much better support system later that sees the same value for you that anyone should hold for you, and they see the beauty and the love and the light that you have. And so as we talk about that and unpack that, the parts of yourself that were really quite protective and wary and resentful of me, they've kind of backed off because they're understanding the place that this reading is coming from is not of judgment or persecution. It's coming from a place of love and support. So you're kind of settling into yourself and giving me room to talk, um, which is really touching in its own way that you've chosen to trust me with that on some level. But I think it's also very telling of the fact that as you begin to accept yourself, you'll start to feel better. And as you find the courage to navigate this world and understand individuals new or pre-existing in your life, whether or not they'll accept you as you become more outspoken and like forward about yourself and unapologetic about yourself, you'll feel better as you find other instances where you're accepted. Um, and the biggest, hardest lesson here is that you will find other people um, that are accepting of you and other cultures and subgroups that are accepting of you. But you're only going to find that if you go through the hard lesson of accepting, even if nobody for the rest of my life or my existence accepts me, I'm okay with me. And when you finally hit that point of I'm doing this for me and I would love to have other people support me, but I'm going to live my life for me regardless of if other people do. When you kind of hit that point, weirdly, that's when you're going to find a lot of other people that accept you. And so it's the decision, the active decision of supporting yourself first, and you will find that other people will as well. But if you never truly support yourself and accept yourself first, um, it's going to be hard to understand when other people do that for you. Even if they do, there will be fears and paranoias in the back of your mind that won't let you fully embrace yourself. So just know that the more work you do on yourself and the more aspects of yourself you accept more fully, the more you will see that reflected in other people. Okay, so we'll move on here and we'll talk about careers and or goals because we can have those regardless of if we're working or how much we do work, and they can overlap as well. So I left it open, which means the messages may resonate differently for any of you watching this pile. But at the beginning of this year, you're starting off in the energy represented by the oyster, and at some point, you're transitioning to the hyena. And when I flipped the hyena card, the most noticeable thing that I got from it is like the hyena's laugh. And I think that there will be a lot more joy in your life and you will find more reasons to smile and laugh authentically, not just because it would be advantageous for you to like be a yes man or conform to agreeing with what other people think is a good time or funny. It'll be authentic, and I think that, you know, that's like a really encouraging sign to hear is that there will be a lot more joy in your life because what I'm kind of getting is that even if you find reasons to be happy and laugh or you have people that may be enjoyable to surround yourself with, because you feel like you're not really embodying your most authentic you and you haven't for a long time, even at your most joyful, parts of you still feel like it's not necessarily authentic. So joy doesn't hit the same way as it will when you have this clear mind state, um, and you're in a better flow state that's willing to grow. So that can sound a little bit heavy, but I think it's really exciting to kind of hear that straight off the bat. So hey, I'm getting from your higher self, unrelated to these cards, that um, they really want to tell you that they're proud of you and they can't believe that you've made it as long as you have in this world, given the hard start for some of you and the traumatic past for all of you, that you've had that have put you in this situation. And they want to stress that you should be patient with yourself because you did exactly what you needed to at the times that you did it. And some of you may feel guilty about that, and some of you may feel embarrassed about where you are now. And your higher self is asking for you not to just be patient, but be really, really proud of yourself and um, anything and everything that you have or that you've earned or that you've accomplished, no matter how small. Even if it's just a I pooped today, it's a very crude example. So some of your higher selves have an interesting sense of humor. But anything and everything that you've cultivated or endured should be a testament to how resilient and how strong and how beautiful you are and how loving and patient you are with the rest of the world. And I'm kind of hearing that it's time to extend that to yourself because more than the rest of the world, you deserve it. And whether you like it or not, you're your biggest advocate, you're your biggest yes man, and you are also your biggest punching bag and villain because Nobody else can fight with your internal dialogue. So if you put yourself down, um, no one else is going to be aware of that and be able to hear you and help you with it unless you voice that and they choose to support you. Um, but no one else can also tell you you're not worth it when your entire internal dialogue tells you you are in fact valuable and you are here for a reason and you deserve to take up space just like anyone else does. So none of that necessarily had to do with what these cards mean. I just got a download and it was a very touching one. Um, so I hope you'll allow for that. But the oyster is known for, here we go, being patient and being a secret keeper. And they have a lot of inner treasures, but they hide it, and you don't know what they have or how many they have. And all of them are going to be different, and that's okay. But I feel like you have a really good grip on being patient with others and understanding or seeing the beauty that a lot of other people have um, in a lot of contexts. And I think it's time to extend that to yourself. That's really what you're being called to do. So the oyster kind of tells us that you're in a position to where you have all this inner beauty, but it's not necessarily reflected to its full degree um, when it's applied to your careers or your goals. So, a lot of what I'm getting is you have talents and skills. Those are things that you've worked really hard for, and those are also things that you came here with, you're naturally good at. And in both cases, or either case, depending on your situation and what you want to achieve with this lifetime, you don't feel comfortable applying those talents that you have to the best of your ability because it would mean outing yourself or exposing some of these parts of you, these aspects of you that you've been shielding for a long time. What I see is that that won't always be the case. Um, and a lot of that's going to stem from this inner work that you do. So I really feel like, again, you're just being called to do this inner work and find ways to start to feel safe with embodying your more authentic selves and accepting the parts of you that have been rejected or hidden for a long time, even though it can be uncomfortable and scary when they come back. So this can kind of manifest itself more realistically, I guess, or more tangibly, I should say, as being shy, being timid, being doubtful, being hesitant. So, like, being okay with doing stuff, but only if someone, like, directly asks you or requests it of you, or in some way giving you permission to do so, even if it feels kind of silly to get permission to do it. Um, so it's kind of like not taking a lot of initiative or leadership. Um, and in some cases like not admitting that you can do certain things as well as you can or you have certain skills or talents because applying them in your mind would risk people seeing who you really are. So the oyster is actually like a very masterful energy. It's just you can't see a lot of that mastery all the time. And so I feel like, again, like the deer, the oyster here is really shown as being out of balance. So there's a lot of like preemptive protection that's going on. There's a lot of reluctancy around certain aspects of yourself, kind of like gripping on to specific things. So some of you like may have the spiritual or emotional crutches that are akin to like a kid with like a blanket or like a teddy bear almost. And it's very easy for you to clam up, like stutter or stifle when you feel like you may be exposed in some way. And we kind of unpacked like what that would be. So I want to move on to the hyena into when you do some of this work and you start to feel better and more empowered and accept yourself for who you are, because we all deserve to accept ourselves and receive love and give love from and to ourselves. But the hyena, when you transition into it, um, again, like when I heard the laugh, hyenas are really a very powerful symbol for humor and like being witty and like kind of sarcastic, but they do so in a healthy way. So they're known for being like a really charming, kind of like when people have that like infectious laugh that makes other people laugh. um, and they can be quite a lot of fun to be around. Like this energy is just it's jovial and it's uplifting. It's not necessarily like discriminatory, so it's not humor at the expense of somebody else. It's more of the vibe of a rising tide lifts all ships. And so even though it is a jokester, there's a very real respect that comes with it. And I think what you'll notice as you start to make these transitions at some point this year is that you're seeing a lot more joy in life and within yourself, and you feel a lot better, and you feel like you have the flexibility to uh, be humorous and allow yourself to laugh, which may be something that a lot of you don't genuinely do anymore, um, or haven't done in a while, or it's like very rare for you. It's going to become more common and natural. And one thing you'll notice that I want to stress, this isn't a bad thing, but you'll start to understand in embracing yourself that there's a lot of new goals and dreams, and those can be career related or just your goals personally, that you really want to pursue and achieve, that you never thought you were going to want to pursue and achieve. So if you were very creative when you were young and that got stifled in terms of being serious, and a lot of adults in your life stifled that part of you and rejected that part of you because like artists can't make a good career for themselves and you need to like support your family, if that's something that was unfairly pushed upon you and asserted to you. One thing you might notice is that now that you're starting to accept yourself, you want to paint again. And you have ideas for all of these new paintings, or you have these ideas for all these new types of sculptures or digital arts, or um, whatever it may be or look like to you. You just decide that you have all of these new goals and dreams because those stem from the parts of you that were hidden, um, or you have aspirations of starting a new company or a new career, um, or you really want to grow a garden and eat vegetables that you made yourself, but before you start working on yourself, you didn't know that you even cared about plants. Something like that, where it might feel unexpected to you, and you're going to go, there's all these things I want to do, and there's all this stuff I want to do, and I've never done it before, and I never had the chance to achieve it. And now I finally can. Like, I'm in a place where I can, and I have the means to do it. So, like, when I was a kid, I wanted a garden, and I couldn't have one. Let's say, like, I really liked being outside, but now I'm an adult. No one can tell me no. I can do what I want with my home, and I have a yard and I have the money to go buy the equipment I need and to dig a plot in my backyard if I feel like it, or put some pots on the windowsill. And I get to pick what pots I get and what seeds I get and all that. And I can buy like the books for it because I have the means to do so now. So there's the overlap of I have the freedoms to, I'm giving myself the permission, the love, and the space to, I'm giving myself the motivation and support to, and I have the resources and time to. So kind of everything's coming together perfectly. So you're going to be in an energy where you see the joy in life and in pursuing goals, and you're going to start seeing all these awesome new goals that you want. So it's not a bad thing that you have stuff that's unaccomplished. It's the reflection that there's a million of doors that are opening that are going to be excited for you. And I hear for a lot of you, this is going to be fruitful in a way you didn't expect. And these hobbies may turn into like very prosperous activities that you do, and your higher self is actually hesitant on using the word career because it's going to be so much fun for you and you're going to get up every day wanting to do it, that it's not going to feel like work the way that you have associated the labors with the word work in your mind. Like that vocabulary is like kind of tarnished now. Um, so this is actually like a really good thing to show you that you kind of got that magic of life back, and it's bleeding over into aspirations of personal goals and career goals that you have. Um, and I don't really have like a better thing I could have said. So I think that's just amazing. Like, you're in a wonderful spot. It just doesn't feel like this year's gonna be amazing for all of you because you're in that beginning phase before everything has blossomed into magnificence. But as soon as the shell comes off of the kernel that is these uh, like old hidden parts of you, and they see some form of light of day, or you see the light that is these parts of you, it's gonna grow so rapidly and you're gonna feel so much better. And then it's gonna feel really exciting and you're gonna look back at this and go like, yeah, this was all a good thing and I'm glad I did all this work. But right now you're gonna get growing pains and it's gonna feel uncomfortable and weird, and your external environment is going to need to change, and you're going to have to make some choices that some of you may or may not be happy about or comfortable with at first, but you'll thank yourself for doing it later. For those of you that end up feeling called to make those tough choices. So, for the last aspect of you, this is simply personal growth. We're not talking about anything external. And so we have you starting in the energy embodied by the shark and later transitioning into the stingray. There's a lot of water energy here. The rest of these go from something to something. So you go from like earth to wind and water to fire. Here you go from water to water. And water is a lot of introspection. It has to do a lot with emotions, kind of like the deeper, more hidden parts of yourself and deeply feeling things, how like your heart and your emotions reflect onto other parts of your life. So I think it's interesting that you're kind of in water energy for before and after some pretty massive growth here. And I feel like it's because as you do this heavy lifting, a lot of this um, growth that's about overcoming a lot of trauma, you'll find that you really kind of like being within yourself and being in your emotions and sitting with yourself. And so instead of growth being challenging at sometimes painful and like really awkward and scary and uncomfortable, you're going to be comfortable with it and more of a master about it. And it's going to be like really okay and natural for you to do all of this. And so later in your life, when you do find yourself in a position where it's time for you to grow more, it won't be traumatic or weird or as dramatic. It'll get a little bit easier every time. This is kind of like a more large challenge than what you will have for the foreseeable future if you take the time to do all this work and love yourself and accept yourself the way that everyone, quite frankly, deserves to be loved and accepted. So, normally I take some time to analyze these cards and tell you what I get in conjunction with these cards and other factors like what I'm hearing, messages I'm getting, and how they relate to, some of the other cards. But the shark's message here, I'll put it on camera if it'll focus, is so profound and on point that I think I would do a disservice not reading it directly. So I have it here in case you want to pause, but I'm going to take the book away so I can actually see it and read it for you. So the main things the shark stands for is directness, exposure, revealing true nature, and desire. And the passage reads, "The shark is only dangerous when we don't acknowledge it." This card indicates that something big needs to be exposed. It's lurking in the depths and creating tension. Shark energy takes over us when we are hesitant to be honest, to be totally ourselves, or to say what we really want. It may be tempting to continue pretending nothing is wrong, but when shark energy is at play, we feel its presence encircling us. So, when it's in balance, the shark is known as being intriguing, captivating, and mysterious. And not that I'm saying you're not any of those things. If nothing else, you definitely come off as mysterious to a lot of other individuals. But I feel like, just like the deer and the oyster, there is a real imbalance that you're feeling simply because when we're ready to make a significant shift to ourselves that impacts us greatly, um, we do feel out of balance, because if we were in balance, there would be nothing to shift or change, or getting ready to shift. So, when out of balance, the shark is known for being sneaky and destructive. And one of the big keys here is to bring into balance requires the act of honesty. I'm called to ask you to take a moment to just let this sink in, because nothing could put this perhaps more eloquently than this shark card. Um, so your significator cards kind of helped me identify what this big thing is, and for each of you the aspects will be different, but again, there's some part or parts or aspects of you that have been hidden. And again, there's no reason to feel ashamed, embarrassed, or frustrated with yourself over that, because that was a very real and necessary response to keep yourself as safe as possible within those situations. The difference is now you're in a position where you don't need that anymore, and it's healthier for you to let go of that. And that's what you're being called to do, and all of these signals are expressing to you so that you have that information. And this year can be so massively impactful and so cathartic and amazing and liberating, empowering, positive, productive, any good adjective you could throw in here, just freaking do it. But I just want to point out very quickly how significant this is, and the fact that there's a little bit of a warning here when it says the shark is only dangerous when we don't acknowledge it. A little bit earlier, when I relayed the message that it's better to acknowledge this in the present, because letting these bottled up emotions stay, or aspects of yourself stay hidden, stay bottled, stay sheltered, they will at some point become explosive. And some part of you will have a snapping moment, um, that will be quite traumatic, because these parts of you and your true self doesn't understand how to express itself and exist the way that it needs to, and it will be very frustrated. And I can't tell you what that will look like for a lot of you. I can just tell you that it'll be really counterproductive, it'll be very traumatic, and it will stunt you emotionally for a very long time. And so there's this slight warning of, don't deny yourself longer because it's not necessary. And even though it may not feel necessarily safe, and you shouldn't be hasty about making this growth. So you shouldn't be rooted with a paranoia or a fear that, oh my God, I have to accept every part of me right now. And, I have to, uh, I have to do all this spiritual work like right now, and if I don't get it right away, then something really bad is going to happen. That's not what this is saying. What it's saying, and again, some of you aren't going to be ready for this until much later in the year, and that's perfect, because whenever you're ready is perfect, and you'll know when you're perfect by following your, or when the time is perfect when you're following your heart. You're already perfect because your imperfections are perfect. But what's really going on here with the shark bringing that up is that when you're at a point where you feel called to start acknowledging yourself for what you truly are, and you continually tell yourself no, and you meet yourself with more rejection or more trauma or more denial, and more covering up and masking, that's when this can turn from a really awesome, liberating, beautiful experience that leads you to re enjoying life on a new profound level you couldn't before, and getting to experience so many new things that are fulfilling to you, and having relationships where you're truly loved for who you truly are. This is where we get into territory of there could be a very real danger of, if you deny yourself unnecessarily longer and it has nothing to do with your external world, it's just you continuing to try to compensate when you no longer need to. That's when you're going to see yourself damaging yourself, and you're going to prolong this pain, and at some point it will become a larger and larger problem. So you don't have to stress and rush anything. When you take the smallest steps you feel you are comfortable taking, when you take them, because that's when it feels okay to take them, uh, that's enough, and that's okay. So, for example, you don't feel comfortable presenting yourself in public as your full you. But when you're at home and you're by yourself, like, let's go back to the anime example, right? Just because I feel like that's pretty tangible. So maybe you don't bust into work like cosplaying, because in a lot of places that's inappropriate. They don't count that as professional attire and you'll be sent home. Um, but let's say, like, when you're home, you start watching animes that you've been curious about for a long time because you want to. And even though you don't show up to work fully representing that, or you don't like call into online meetings, or you don't go hang out with friends with like a t-shirt on that has your favorite anime plastered across the front, which again, there's nothing wrong with wearing stuff like that, but you're not comfortable doing that yet. That baby step of just accepting, I like this and I'm curious about it, so in the comfort of my own home, in the privacy of my own bedroom, with my phone or my computer with headphones, whatever it is, you just watch that because you want to. Like, that's enough of a step forward, and as you watch it, you don't shame yourself and you're like, oh, I'm such a weirdo for watching this, and I can't believe, like, I don't know what I would do if somebody else caught me doing this. Like, you don't shame yourself while you're doing it or after. You watch it because you like to, and you say, I'm not ready to present this side of me to the rest of the world yet. And that's okay, because I don't owe the world anything. And I'll get there when I get there and when I'm ready to get there. And maybe the first time you do talk about it is when someone initiates first. So you overhear some friends or acquaintances or coworkers talking about an anime that you got around to watching, and so instead you start to join their conversation and just say like, oh yeah, I watch it too, and it's like really cool, like, where are you in it? Instead of walking up to like everyone on the street and going, hey, do you watch this? And they say like, no, leave me alone. There's different versions of doing baby steps. On the other side of things, if you heal to the point where you just go full blown and you watch an anime, you fall in love with it, so then you buy tickets to go to like, a massive convention hosted in like a big city in like California or whatever, and you get like all dressed up and you meet a whole bunch of new friends at the convention, and now everyone supports you on the same level that you did when you're in that space, and that's really exciting and freeing and liberating for you. That's also fine. um, the important part is you grow at the speed that feels comfortable and safe and exciting for you and brings you joy, and doesn't make you inherently uncomfortable and feel like you want to go backwards and then revert, because that would be damaging. So I hope that that example made sense, and I hope the shark card doesn't scare you or at any point make you feel pressured to go faster or take steps before when you're ready to. It's just here to tell you that if you feel called to take steps and you feel safe and capable of doing so, like, don't put it off just because it might, um like, doing something different feels kind of weird, but you recognize that if you did it, you wouldn't shame yourself for it, and you wouldn't love yourself any less, and you would be proud of yourself, even if it does make you uncomfortable. So the stingray, on the other hand, what you'll transition into, um, is a little bit different. So the stingray isn't known for being a master of the mind or confidence or anything, but instead, I think it's a very realistic representation of what you'll go into right after the shark. Um, and it's kind of like the hyena, where it's still a state of growth and transition. So the stingray is a symbol of developing confidence and developing a sense of self, um, and maybe very crudely put, or developing a sense of a spine. Not saying that you guys are spineless. I think you're actually very strong and robust, for going through what you've gone through and come out the other side, as successful and well put together as you are. And I feel like you deserve, a massive applause and a hug for going through what you've been through, and now being in a position to where you can grow from it. Like, I think your back is probably stronger than a lot of other people. Um, Not to, diminish those people, but just saying, like, I think implying that you may have not had a spine before is a little raw. So what's going on here is, in developing yourself, I believe the use of spine here is more to talk about how you're developing, internally, and it will have some very real changes on yourself. And so maybe not your real anatomy, but like more or less akin to your spiritual anatomy. So a backbone is made up of vertebrae, and they're stacked on top of each other. And very crudely, they go from like a larger diameter one to a smaller one. We're going to ignore the tailbone for this, those of you that are anatomy savvy. Um, and so what's really happening here is you're kind of adding these stacked blocks of, parts of yourself that you now choose to identify as and are cementing into your identity. So you're adding a vertebra that says, I deserve love, and I recognize that, and I do love myself. And you're adding another vertebra stacked on that that says, I'm giving myself respect because I deserve to be respected. And you're adding another one on that says, it's okay to not see eye to eye with other people and be rejected externally, um, and still not reject myself. So I accept me for who I am unconditionally, and I'm proud of me. And then maybe you add another vertebra that says, something like, I am strong and I am successful and I am funny. And it can be as superfluous as, like, I do smell great because I shower every day and I wear some bomb ass cologne. It doesn't have to be super profound. It can be baby steps and otherwise. But what you'll see is that this more or less like spine, quote unquote, that you're building will have very profound effects on you in the long run. So the Stingray is a very real, awesome, encouraging card because it's saying you're developing confidence. But this is a journey, and it's about the journey, not the destination. And so you're going to be in a position to where you're really happy with where you are, and you're so proud of yourself, and you feel so fulfilled and excited to live your life, just like we talked about with the hyena. Um, but you also recognize that there's so much more that you're going to accomplish, and there's so much more you're still going to learn about yourself, and you're going to develop into, more and more elevated versions of yourself that you weren't expecting. And pretty soon, you're going to be an influence to yourself. You're going to be someone that you're proud of showing up for every day and presenting to other people. And it's going to get easier and easier to defend yourself and advocate for yourself. And that's going to inspire other people and cultivate, probably for a lot of you, I'm hearing, an awareness of what you've been through within your social circles and otherwise. to help other people through this, and that's really beautiful. So let's move on really quickly here because this has already been a long reading. So if you're here, thank you. And I would like to talk about. We'll put these cards up here with the pyrite. We'll leave the stingray on top because that's a really awesome message to get. So we're moving on here to. I only have one card, but it has three messages telling you. It's telling you that the Sweat Lodge represents the womb of Mother Earth. Volcanic stones are heated in a fire outside, then brought into the lodge and placed in a shallow hole in the center. Participants sit in complete darkness and the red hot stones to sweat away old habits and beliefs and heal disease. When you return humbly to the womb of the mother, you are offered second chances. Now, for you, I believe a lot of this is metaphorical in a way that other people won't hear this card as profoundly. And what I'm really hearing is that these old habits that are protecting these inner parts of you, or shielding them, or burying them, or rejecting them, however it resonates for you, they're no longer needed. And therefore, if you give them the opportunity, they will fall away. And once they start leaving you, it will be effortless. Like how it takes work to build up a sweat, perhaps, and it can be uncomfortable. Like if you're somewhere really hot. But once the sweat starts rolling, it just rolls. You don't think about pushing sweat down your body or evaporating, it just happens. And there's a very real call to the fact that this is going to be habits and beliefs. So, some of the inherent beliefs that you have, for some of you out there, simply are not true. So, if you believe that whatever you're hiding from the world is in fact weird or something to be embarrassed about or ashamed of, or that, quote, normal people don't like this, or they don't do this, or they don't want to do this, please understand that you're being called to know that that isn't a true belief you have. That's been conditioned into you and forced upon you by other individuals in your life that shouldn't have had the influence on you that they have had. And it's finally time to let those painful beliefs go because they are opinions, not of you. They are not truths. Um, and it may be scary and awkward at first, but it's going to feel a lot better when you re understand who you are called to be, and it will feel more comfortable eventually after you do this growth. So, in a very real way, when this card talks about healing disease, I believe this is more a disease of the mind than of the body for you. Um, and if thinking about these coping mechanisms, perhaps you could call it, that you may embody have, if it's detrimental for you to think about them as a disease, please don't, because at one time they weren't an ailment. But at this point, they've reached a point where, you know, they're not in your best interest and they're not necessarily happy and healthy for you. And not that they ever were healthy, but they're not allowing you to function at the frequencies you should, just because you're not navigating the world and conducting yourself in a way that's in aligned with your truest, most loving, most authentic self. So it will feel better when they're not there, and it'll feel like you've healed. And it's kind of hard to heal if there's nothing to heal from. And that's where the word disease comes from, is it's not trying to shame you, it's simply trying to explain to you that there is an aspect of you that when it falls away, you'll be able to heal, and there will be room and space and lack of resistance to do so. So, the next portion of this card, the second message, simply reads, This is a time to journey inward into the dark and hidden places of your soul and reconnect with the ancient earth wisdom. You can also create a sacred and intimate place in the dark by lighting a candle. Observe what emerges, and without judging it, invite it to bring you its gifts. You are being offered an opportunity to shed and heal from the aspects of your life you have outgrown. And that's the most important part there. You have come so far since whenever these traumatic events were, um, to the point where you no longer need to cope for them, or protect yourself against them, because they won't repeat like they have in the past. And if you do face rejections in the future, you will have the emotional wisdom to not allow them to hurt you the way that they have in the past, because they no longer hold that type of power over you as rejections once did. You're in a place to where you can deny them, in a way that's healthy for you, and you won't be damaged from it. So you are being offered an opportunity to shed and heal from the aspects of your life you have outgrown. Do not worry that you will be consumed by the process. Um, and so, for those of you that that resonates with, just understand that no matter how scary and uncomfortable this process feels, when it's right to do so, even though it's scary and uncomfortable and probably painful at times, it will still be worth it. And you're ready for it when, even though it does uh, seem really uncomfortable, it will still feel worth it, and you'll still feel called to do it, because to not do it would feel worse somehow. And it will start to feel better, the more that you practice this and the more that you do it. Just don't rush yourself, and you won't get lost in the process. You'll come out the other side, um, feeling a lot more like yourself. So, the last message this card has reads: Life is offering you a second chance. Take it, since this chance may not come your way again for a while. Mother Earth is calling you into her womb and inviting you to incubate as long as needed for spiritual rebirth. Gift yourself time to be with your darkness, your fears, your pain, your seeds of beautiful potential, until you come out the other side free, wise, and full of creativity. And I think it's pretty profound that a single card can have messages that just overlapped with everything we've seen so far. Um, because I didn't pull these cards before we looked at them. I pulled them all face down. So I had no idea what this reading was about, and I feel really honored that I was able to talk about something so sensitive, um, and that your higher selves would allow me to do that the way that they did. Um, and so I think this card is really uplifting and encouraging and gentle about it, because a lot of you out there, may feel frustrated with where you at, and when you start doing the healing it might feel like you do have a second chance. But I just want to say, you'll always have as many chances as you need. So if for whatever reason you feel like you're failing, know that you will be offered any amount of chances you need, up to the umpteenth, um, and beyond. But for a lot of you, I feel like it may be a disservice to think about this as a second chance, because there may be implications and connotations associated with that phrase that will subconsciously or otherwise tell you that the beginning part of your life was a failure and was not worth it, based on how you reacted and treated yourselves. And again, I urge you to conduct your self reflection with the utmost respect, and patience and love for yourself, because you did the best that you could with the tools you were given for the situation and time that you were in these traumatic situations. And the fact that you're here today listening to some stranger on the internet tell you these things, you're alive and you're breathing, um, and you're going to do all of this wonderful work here this year, tells me and hopefully shows yourself that you did a marvelous job getting yourself here, because it was no small feat to do so and be in the positions that you're in. And I think a lot of people forget to give themselves credit for just being alive, because life is so hard even when it goes the way that you want to. There's always maintenance, and there's always upkeep, and there's always effort that needs to put in, and there's always something that you wish could be easier or go differently. Um, and so it can be so hard when life isn't going in a way that, you know, doesn't leave us some kind of damaged or traumatized, or feeling the need to gain different mechanisms to guard and support ourselves. Um, so just understand that you've been through a lot and you've done a fantastic job. But what a fantastic job looks like going forward is different than what it used to. And that's why there are parts of yourself that are ready to be let go of. Now, before we move on to the last cards here, I wanted to draw from a tarot deck I have here, just to ask if there's any last words of advice or encouraging pieces of wisdom your higher self, your guides, or the universe may have for you. And I particularly want to use this tarot deck because it's called it's called the New Chapter Tarot, which I think is just perfect to start off a new year with, and for you, obviously, a very um, uplifting, empowering, exciting new chapter. So I'm just going to see if there are any other extra messages that somebody wants to pass on to you or reiterate one more time, because this has been such a such an impactful reading about such a sensitive and vulnerable topic. So I'll shuffle for a bit and we'll see if any cards pop out. Hmm? All right, we'll take those. I think that's enough. um, so again, reversals aren't a bad thing. There are two here. There's simply a way for me to get extra information. Let's move these so I can actually read these. So I think it's interesting that the King of Cups managed to land overlapping the upside down or reverse Four of Swords, which I recognized as the Four of Cups for the beginning of this video, as well as the King of Pentacles. What I'm really seeing here is that as you go through this growth process and this cycle, eventually these two energies are going to end up merging. And what you'll come out on the other side with is the capabilities and abundance and influence over the physical world that the King of Pentacles has, that you already feel that you have, or know that you experience, or even if you don't know the what you actually have to be in the position you are, to where you can allow yourself the space and the means of healing, and the time and the resources to do that. Allocate towards it, I guess is a good way to say it. And the King of Cups himself has this profound emotional maturity, and he's comfortable with being in his emotions, knowing how to navigate them, seeing those in others. So it's kind of like this emotional wisdom on a more profound level. And just like we said with the stingray, you'll be okay with sitting in those and growing from it. They'll no longer feel traumatic. You'll be well connected with them. And you'll be in a place where you understand a lot where your heart is coming from and how you want to navigate the world. So intuitively and on an emotional basis, you'll understand what goals you want to have moving forward, what people you want to surround yourself, what you want to accept and what you don't want to accept. And so instead of having other people have the power over you to traumatize you in other ways, they'll no longer have that power over you again, because you'll simply understand their rejection doesn't hold power or sway or influence over you unless you let it. And so their rejection will just be a sign to you that they're not meant to be in your life for a long time, and they don't deserve to take up space, and they're not going to, because you're simply not going to allow it. And even though those rejections may sting, because you're still a sensitive person that holds concern or cares about what other people think, it'll be really easy for you to reflect on it and say, it bothers me when other people don't accept me and like me, because I enjoy when people do, but just because they don't doesn't mean I'm less valuable. There's something wrong with me and I don't deserve love. It simply means that I'm not going to give them the time of day, and I'm not going to invite them back into my life. Um, and I think that's a very realistic way to handle the world, because we don't get to choose how other people act around us and treat us. We instead choose how we're impacted by that and what power they hold over us and what actions we will take in response. So I think this is a very beautiful, mature place to be. And you're going to be in a place to where you're very nurturing for other people in your life. And that's what the Queen of Cups is saying over here. So you have both the masculine and feminine masters of the cups, so of emotions, and they complement themselves in a way to where you're very well rounded. And you can handle a lot and you can help other people a lot. You also have the Princess of Cups, which in this deck is the Page of Cups. So you're going to be very comfortable starting new emotional endeavors with yourself. And what your guides and your higher self really mean by that is that you're going to feel very comfortable and in ways capable and excited to look at yourself and say, I feel like it's time for me to grow again. And it's going to feel natural to say, I'm ready to like sit with myself and take the time to think about what I want and why I might be feeling like there's more for me out there, or I'm a little unsatisfied, or I'm a little off kilter, off balance, a little upset right now, a little unsatisfied, a little sad, whatever it may be. It's going to be simple, I think is the best way to put it. It's going to be simple for you to sit down and question and explore and say, I feel called to do this now, or I want to be okay with identifying as this or thinking this way. And so every new journey you start off on or new emotion you explore is going to be easy for you to explore in the future, which is a lot of what the Stingray um, kind of talked about earlier. So I think that all these cards being in reverse is a really bad thing. Or telling you opposites. A lot of what's happening is these cards are showing up in reverse because all of your significator cards and otherwise I put on the table upright, even if they were accidentally upside down, because these animal cards don't necessarily signal a new energy to me if they're upside down, even though they might have been trying to tell me your energy is off balance. I just inherently don't draw this deck upside down. Um, and so I think what they're really doing is they're kind of mirroring you're doing work beneath the surface. So it's like a waterfront and a reflection. And we're seeing this work that's happening below that will then reflect in a way to where you can see it. So it's not always like physical versus emotional. Sometimes it's higher self reflected to lower self. So your higher self um, will be impacted profoundly by the work you do, and it will receive these impacts before you see payoffs in your own patterns of thinking or your emotions. So, how you feel. Your higher self will kind of feel better and get tuned to a more uplifting, loving frequency before you start to feel better about yourself and love yourself. And that's okay. But that's kind of what I'm getting here is like an as above, so below dichotomy. Um, and so, really, what's happening is you're kind of judging what deserves to be here and what doesn't. And you're doing a lot of justice for yourself that you didn't have before, which is kind of why you developed these more or less like necessary survival um, beliefs or patterns of thinking or shielding certain parts of yourself that you did. So, you're answering a lot of justice that and giving yourself a lot of justice that your higher self believes you are due for. And a lot of what that looks like is culling or cutting away what no longer needs to be there and giving space to allow other things to shine through, like we talked about earlier. I think it's funny the Ten of Swords showed up, not on like a comical level, but it's an interesting coincidence because another pile got the Ten of Swords in the same way, and it had a similar message. So another one of my piles talked about doing a lot of shadow work because their shadow had some messages for them and wanted to support them with something. If you also saw that pile, hello. Interesting coincidence. If you didn't, that's okay. And I'm not going to point out that pile because if you weren't called to go see it, then like I don't think this one coincidence is meant for you. And that could be wrong, and then you could go find that pile. But the Ten of Swords showing up like this kind of shows a dark shadow at the top and light coming out from the bottom. And it was in this reflection esque form, like it is right now, upside down, where it kind of showed an as above, so below situation. And sometimes we forget that on a spiritual, metaphysical level, as above isn't always up, and so below isn't always down because there isn't always a set up and down. And even though the poles that we describe as up and down are fixed here, they can change or be non existent otherwise. So sometimes, so below or the blackness that's associated with that, and a lot of imagery can be the above and the other can be below. So the shadow was more above the light to try to explain something important and talk about how the shadow wanted to be placed in a position of more power and respect, in that it wanted to be heard and its advice to be taken seriously, regardless of if they accepted on it or acted on it or not. As an advisor, the shadow part of these individuals wanted to explain an important message and what they had noticed and where they had been coming from to put things back into balance. And I kind of get a little bit of that here, where your shadow self has been doing a lot of compensatory work to hold a lot of things together for you. And part of that was encompassing and shielding some of these aspects of yourself that you felt the need to hide or bury or outright reject. Um, you were able to successfully hide, bury, reject, suppress them, in part because your shadow had been cocooning them. And it didn't do so in a malicious way. It was quite loving, in fact, but your shadow was able to hide that energy so that that resonance or that light didn't shine through you to other people. So you may have tangibly been rejecting certain parts of yourself by not acting on those qualities, or speaking about what you wanted to do. But on a much more metaphysical level, your shadow was also hiding those resonances and frequencies from other individuals, higher beings, so that it's harder to sniff out. So, you know how sometimes, like, some people will surprise you and they'll say, and you'll ask them, like, what do you do for a career, right? And they'll say, oh, I'm an artist. And you'll say, really? Because you look kind of like an engineer. Or when you're in high school and you say, I bet that kid's going to grow up to be a math teacher. Um, like sometimes, wrongfully or rightfully, people will kind of pick up some stuff about other humans on a like a vibration frequency or and like mannerisms combined to kind of say like, oh, I really expected you would be kind of like that. And your shadow tried to do a lot of work to help cover up certain parts of you at your request to protect you in certain harmful, damaging, scary situations. So your shadow's saying, as long as you're ready to let go and cultivate these other parts of you that have been hidden from the upper world, they're willing to let go of those things. But they do ask that you make sure you're ready and you acknowledge to yourself you're ready, because they don't want to do you the disservice of letting go of those things early. So the last card that we have to talk about is the Three of Swords in reverse. And unlike the other cards, this sword, I believe, is actually in reverse because it's explaining to you that things will be changing for you as you start doing this work. So normally the Three of Swords has relations to loss, disappointment, emotional strife. Um, and the idea of feeling stuck or reaching an impasse. So, whatever path you were going down is no longer able to be traversed or continued on further. So, there are tough decisions ahead for you. And sometimes this can manifest as like painful um, occurrences or harsh words from other people. So this can sometimes look like some really harsh instances of like you getting slapped in the face with reality, like you're hitting that brick wall. And I kind of see the otherwise here, where you kind of already underwent some harsh realities and you are now disillusioning yourself from these like kind of survival mechanisms that you've picked up. And so the disillusionment happens and you're going to relearn who your true self is and accept that and not only be fine with that but be proud of it. And so the harsh reality is really coming in sort of what we talked about with the shark, where the harsh reality is if you continue to live by rejecting or hiding and suppressing aspects of your true self that are ready to come out because it's safe for you to do so and you have the capacity to host and grow and nurture that, you're going to be met with some detrimental and harsh realities later of you really not being happy and your essence kind of fighting with itself, and that can come out in more detrimental, more traumatic, explosive ways like the shark warned against earlier. So all of this is sort of what we've seen before, just said in a slightly different way. And it's really exciting to see all of this. And it's always really fun when your shadow comes out to say, like, hey, I'm supporting you and you're wonderful. Because I think a lot of people get scared when you talk about shadow work and they forget that it's a part of you. So, and it's a higher operating, like higher frequency part of you. So it does actually, at its core, operate on a understanding and frequency of providing unconditional love to you. But when it's like out of whack, that can get skewed, and that's kind of where we see its villainization. So it's just kind of fun to hear that there are multiple aspects of you that are rooting for you, because it can make you feel more supported, and I hope you do feel supported. So I want to move on to our last two cards, which are different pieces of advice. I asked for them to be indicators of what kind of energy work or healing work would be helpful for you for going through this growth over the whole year. We'll see what they have to say real quick, and then we'll finish up this reading with one inspirational quote from a book picked at random, just for some uplifting extra words of advice from a different medium, and then we'll be done. So, for those of you who are here, thank you, and I hope you're here because this is helpful in some way for your journey, because that's the whole goal of this. And if this helps even one person, I'm more than happy with this. So we have two cards here, and they're classified based on different energies they represent. So we have physical, and then we have this other one that's kind of sectored into three. So fire is the overarching energy here, and then that's accented or nuanced by what this book calls ancestor fire, and then moon. So so this being specifically classified as ancestor fire here is really calling those of you that this resonates to, that some of your spirit guides are, at this point in time, your ancestors and people from your bloodline that may have passed away that you know, or you have never met before and have no idea who they are on a human level. But these ancestors are here for you, and this is a call to tell you that they support you as you go through this, and you're not the only one in your bloodline that's had to deal with something like this before. So they understand the energy you're going through, and that's kind of why they can find you now, is because they've picked up on that. So if meditating is something you enjoy doing, you may find some sporadic thoughts in your head or narratives that are actually them trying to get through to you and support you. There are a couple, very specifically, that want to tell you that in this case, your shadow is here for you. So some of you may have had, and this is wildly specific, but some of you may have had shaman or some shamanistic practices or masters of those crafts in your bloodline, in your past, and they're very proud of you and they're excited about where you're going to go. And this may be a calling to re invigorate or start practicing again what they may have taught you, or your family before they left this earth. And I know it's really specific, so take with that what you will. But for a lot of others, what this is really saying is that perhaps like fiery types of meditations are going to be helpful and very comforting for you. So, like lighting candles could be oddly more comforting for you than they have been before, because that fire energy is something that's helping tune your frequencies or like soothe you as you're going through uncomfortable times. For those of you that go camping a lot or have fire pits, this may be giving you the same effect in that they're oddly more comforting than they have been in the past. So maybe being around it more could be a good thing for you as you transition um, and to make this very drastic change in your life, however long it takes. The other thing I will say is that there's a very real call in the description of this card to tell you that uh, cultivating more trust in yourself and trusting your soul is going to be key here, and that's really what the moon is talking about, is like the deeper aspects of yourself that you don't necessarily connect with regularly or are aware of connecting with on a human level. For others of you, this card is also talking about how your dreams, if you have very vivid dreams or you start having very interesting sporadic dreams, they can tell you a lot about yourself. Some of them will help explain um, what kinds of traumas are linked to why certain parts of you have been shielded or suppressed. So when you're ready facing those traumas and really questioning like what happened and am I ready to not let those affect me anymore, is going to be a big key in your healing. For some of you, your ancestors will come visit you in these dreams to try to help you out as well. And so the messages may be abstract and you may be able to hear them or not, but for some of you, dreams are going to give you a lot more information than they maybe normally do. I think that getting the physical card here is a very interesting way to pull things around in one big final full circle. So, being specifically just physical, this card is asking you to evaluate what is in your physical reality or what you consider your physical reality. So, that can be anything from evaluating how you care for your physical body in terms of exercise, fitness, diet, and interestingly enough, your sleep and if you're getting enough sleep or too much sleep. Uh, and so that kind of ties back into, for some of you, dreams are going to be important. So being able to sleep the way you need to will help you in that you'll get dreams and those can be healing or supportive or have good messages, helpful messages for you. Um, Others of you, physical can mean reflecting on where you've gotten yourself to and understanding that there's a lot to be grateful and you should be really proud of yourself. And maybe in your physical reality, there are things that you can tune up to help yourself out more. So if fire is extra comforting to you right now, because that's a type of energy um, that could just help alleviate some of these new frequencies you're going to get into. That may be very useful. And like meditating with candles, you can Google a lot of ways to do that if that's something you feel could be useful to you. There's also, I feel here, a real call to assess who are your friends, who do you want to keep as your friends, is your family helping you or hurting you, would it be helpful to have more or less distance from them. If you subscribe to the idea of having a chosen family, um, is it time to try to find new people for your chosen family? Do you want to keep them? Will they understand? Are they people that are good for you while you go through these healing experiences? So there's going to be a very real call to assess whose needs to be shed if some of these people are perpetuating this hurt and this feeling of need to suppress parts of yourself, because it's very possible that for a decent amount of you out there, because you've been masking yourself as you grow and present yourself as the most authentic you to those close to you, some people will be shocked and surprised and they won't understand because they haven't seen this part of you before, and they will push back and deny or reject you or not take you seriously. And instead of letting that damage you and go backwards to this state, that's an opportunity to shed these people from your life that no longer serve you because they're simply not meant to be there anymore. Um, because some of you are going to look like a brand new person to everyone else, even though you won't identify as a new person because you always knew these were aspects of you. If they didn't, they'll be surprised and they might not treat you like the same person. So they might not deserve to have you in their lives. Um, and they might not deserve the luxury of taking up space in yours and taking your time, your energy, your resources, your love. You can reserve those for people who are healthy for you. So I think those are great pieces of advice. Um, and they tie into a lot of what we said here, so I'll leave them as they are, and you can deal with them however they resonate. So the very last thing I want to do is I want to grab an excerpt from a book to read for you. And I want it to be random, so if there are synchronicities, they're significant. It's not just me like trying to plan things out. Um, and so, just to show you that it's random, I have a four-sided die to pick from four different books. So we're gonna take my second book, which no other pile has gotten. It's this sweet blue one. And we're going to roll this d12, which will tell us how many 20-sided dice we're going to roll. And the sum of those 20-sided dice will tell us what page we're going to read from. That way you know it's completely not up to me. So if the message has synchronicities or resonates, it's an extra layer of telling you you were meant to hear it right now and it's for you. I'm not just picking stuff at random because I think it sounds cool. So we got one. And let me, hold on. Okay, so we're going to read pages 8 and 13 because I felt called to re-roll that for some reason. And we're going to go in order, so we're going to read 13 first, and then we'll read 8. So here's page 13, in case you want to pause. I will read it to you, though. It says, so I was talking with this tree a while back. Universe, it said to me. Yeah, I said back. When I come back, I don't want to be just wood. Well, I thought out loud, what's wrong with being just wood? It's hard, the tree said, without cracking a smile. When I come back, I want to be soft and furry so that I'll be loved by children. And I thought, and I thought, and I thought, and I finally asked, why not be tall and strong just as you are and loved by children? And the children came to play. Do you really think you have to change to have what you want? And this is kind of an interesting dichotomy because a lot of what we talked about is talking about changing. And so I think there's this very real juxtaposition of this passage saying, like, do you have to change to be loved? And I think this book is referencing a time before the trauma happened where you were okay with embodying these true aspects of yourself. It's more referencing that point in time where you're okay with referencing these true aspects of yourself before they got denied and you felt the need to suppress or reject or hide them. And the book is really prompting you in this quote to ask, did you really need to change to be loved? Because if you're going to undo these compensatory, suppressive mechanisms and patterns, then you're kind of proving you didn't need to change in the first place to be loved. And that's important because you did it to protect yourself and survive at the time. Um, but now that you're not in that time of needing to protect yourself this way because you're in a healthier environment and you're there because of you, so thank yourself for that. Because you did this. This is your life and you achieved all of these wonderful goals. So now you're in a place where you don't need to take drastic measures like this to protect yourself. And you can recognize that you were worthy of love as your true self before. You were just in a really tough situation where circumstances outside of your control that you couldn't get away from uh, told you otherwise. And they were in a position of power to where they could negatively impact you worse if you didn't act this way. So this was a need of the situation, not a need to go find love. I hope that makes sense. So the other quote we have here from this book was on page 8. Doo-doo-doo. This is page 8. It says, "Believe it or not, if it weren't for your so-called issues, problems, and challenges, there'd be no other way you could become even happier, cooler, and more enlightened than you have ever been before. Granted, you being even cooler boggles the mind." And I can't think of a better way to end this reading than with that, because we're the universe and your guides and your higher self are really reiterating that this growth is a good thing, and you shouldn't feel ashamed to do it or embarrassed that you're in a position to where it's ready to happen. And you're going to come out the other side, not necessarily going backwards to where you are before you suppressed or hid some parts of yourself. You're going to come out even better because you learned so many lessons along the way, and you built yourself up to the point where you are now. So when you embody these things in the future and then moving forward after that, it's going to be so much more powerful and so much more refined and beautiful than it was when these things were within a younger, less strong version of you. So I just want to end by saying you deserve to be loved and proud of yourself and surrounded by people that agree with that. So I wish you the best of luck on your personal growth this year, whatever that looks like for you. Um, and I will see you next time in a brand new video.